Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca Sofer. Welcome to the January edition of Light After Loss, where we chat on 1-800-Flowers Facebook page about all the things that we may not feel so comfortable talking about in casual conversation. But ironically, these are the things that kind of happen to so many of us. So this series is dedicated to pulling some of these issues out of the shadows so that we can talk about them in broad daylight, communally, and with various experts every single month. I am the co-founder of Modern Loss, which is a global community, a publication, a movement that is really solely focused on pulling people together across the long arc of living with loss, and building resilience and finding meaning, and also dealing with the mess of it. We are well aware that there is a constant underbelly to life, that everything forevermore in life in general, but especially after loss is a mixed bag of emotions. And I really appreciate the 1-800-Flowers team because for years now, they have understood that. They never shy away from difficult conversations because they know that it's not all celebratory flowers that we send. A lot of the times it's flowers of support, flowers of sympathy, flowers of mourning, flowers of just, I see you in your hard thing. And so I'm really grateful to be able to host this series with them. All right, so I'm going to dive right in. We're in January. This is a rather dreary time of year for much of the country, unless you live in Santa Barbara or something, in which case I'm very envious. We're post holidays, post festivities. It's already kind of like a natural letdown period of time, but also, it's gross outside. It's dark. It's getting dark very early. It might be hard to get to different places to do the things that we can do at the height of summer, easily gather. We are also very much in a continued triple-demic, a combination of in the throes of COVID, flu season, RSV. There's a lot of illness out there. So a lot of us may be, for all of these reasons, feeling even more socially isolated and disconnected than in, I would say, ordinary abnormal times, which is what we're living in these days forevermore. I think that this feeling can be exacerbated in times of personal loss for many obvious reasons, but really loneliness is a thing for all of us, and feeling detached from others is something that we all struggle with. In fact, we're kind of in a loneliness epidemic. We went through a long period of time where we were so incredibly socially distanced from each other that we all started to suffer in various ways. Americans are experiencing higher levels of loneliness and feelings of isolation than ever before. And so I'm especially grateful to be speaking with today's guest about this stuff because she is the expert in it, and she's going to give us some advice and also put some context to the issue. I'm here with Dr. Chloe Carmichael. She's a clinical psychologist and USA Today bestselling author of the book Nervous Energy: Harness the Power of Your Anxiety. And it's called A Game Changer by Jim McCann, who is the founder of 1-800-Flowers. She's a leading expert on anxiety and stress management and has been featured across media. So I'm really grateful that she's here today. Dr. Chloe, thank you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Rebecca. It's great to be with you. And I just want to echo what you said about feeling grateful to be working with 1-800-Flowers. I've been so impressed by the depth that the organization puts into thinking about, just as you said, that flowers are not always about celebration. Sometimes we want to reach out and connect with people at times when we're actually very vulnerable. So I'm really thankful as well for the chance to talk with you today about the epidemic of loneliness. It's such an important topic, and I'm glad that we're here to talk about it today.
So first of all, Dr. Chloe, let's just go to the basics, right? I always talk about, I talk about grief day in and day out. And I always say, if it feels like grief to you, then it's grief, right? I mean, who is to say what is or is not a feeling of loss or grief to any other person? So how do you identify if you're lonely? Like, what is loneliness?
Well, I would say loneliness is basically a lack of satisfaction with the quantity or quality of social interaction that you're getting. And you used the word epidemic. I actually think that's an appropriate word. In preparation for this conversation, I just learned a few basic statistics. So, according to some recent surveys that were published in Harvard's publications online, 36% of Americans are suffering from loneliness, but those numbers are especially high. 63% for the 18 to 25 age group, and 51% for mothers with young children. And the statistics are also rather high for people who are in the elderly communities. And, to your point about the pandemic as well, my heart has especially gone out to the elderly, because I think in an effort to, quote, protect the elderly, what we've also done is isolate the elderly. And so in many ways, they're starving for touch, they're starving for interaction. So I'm really glad that we're talking about this.
Now is going to outlast the actual viral pandemic. So, loneliness, it's like people say, oh, it's like I'm lonely, but, and I think that sometimes we don't ascribe enough import to things that feel more social, feel more kind of like amorphous and touchy-feely with our emotions, right? We sometimes as Americans like fixing things, and we like to feel productive, and we pay more attention on like to things that are like numbers and just like goals that we're hitting. But loneliness can feel like a very like amorphous thing. However, it can be incredibly detrimental. So I would love to anchor the idea of loneliness within some context. I mean, can you share some data and examples about the detrimental effects of loneliness, so that people who are feeling it can kind of realize, hey, wait, I think I need to pay attention and kind of like examine what I'm going through right now?
Absolutely, Rebecca. And I think you're right. I will share some data on it, but I just want to say I think you're right. There can be a tendency either to minimize the importance of social connection, thinking it's just kind of this frivolous thing that we don't really need, which we actually do. It's been linked to everything from coronary heart disease to dementia, because we're not getting that, interaction, as well as anxiety and depression. So we have this tendency to minimize it, like you were saying, maybe because we don't realize it's important. But I also think sometimes people minimize it because they're ashamed of it, because it can touch upon what psychologists call rejection sensitivity. It can
Mm-hmm.
also touch upon, people's self-esteem or sense of worthiness. And, it's kind of the oldest trick in the book is to pretend, well, I didn't care about that anyway, right? And so we can almost give ourselves a double whammy if we actually abandon ourselves and really kind of pretend like we don't care about that need for that we have for people. So one of the first things I actually suggest people to do when they realize that they're lonely is actually, this may sound very counterintuitive, but to congratulate themselves on the awareness that they're lonely, and to actually regard it as a sign of health, that this signals that you have a strong, healthy social appetite. It's much better than not being around people and, not caring for people and not wanting anything to do with people. That type of person wouldn't really describe themselves as being lonely. They would describe themselves perhaps as a loner. But someone who says, no, I actually have a longing for people, instead of being ashamed of that, again, I would actually look at that as a positive thing about you. It means that you're in touch with your healthy need for people. The next step, of course, is just to work towards filling that need.
Right. I mean, I always love quoting Mr. Rogers because, I mean, duh, he was a genius. And he used to say, if it's mentionable, it's manageable. Right. And sometimes the hardest thing for us to do is actually say it out loud, because A, maybe we're not fully aware of it, or B, we're kind of aware, but we're scared to say something out loud because then it makes us feel like something's wrong with us to name it. But once we do name it, I know this as someone who has named many things that she has gone through that are difficult in life. It kind of feels like, I see what I'm struggling with right now. Okay, now that it's on paper or out there in the ether, now what do I do? Like, how do I work toward like getting myself what I need so that I can move through this in a way that gets me not maybe to the other side, but feeling like I'm getting what I need so that I can live a meaningful life.
Which is actually the healthy function of that awareness. So, in my book, Nervous Energy Harness the Power of Your Anxiety, I talk about how the healthy function of anxiety is to stimulate preparation behaviors. The healthy function of realizing that you're lonely is actually to stimulate you to get out there and to seek social connection. So, once again, we want to step out of any kind of shame cycle and actually allow that loneliness to do its good, healthy job, which is to stimulate you to get out there and have some social connection, which is a healthy thing to do.
Now, I'm going to ask you about some things that we can do for ourselves and for others when we're struggling with loneliness. But before that, I'd love to, you and I, we're chatting on social media. Like that's what we're doing. So I do believe that social media has its upsides, right? I think that it has, in terms of pulling people together who are experiencing very difficult things, it is a low touch platform for people to find each other and connect on it in certain groups. Like Modern Loss has a closed support group, peer to peer support group. I'm sure you must have, a lot of platforms where people can access what you have to say. And so it does have an upside. However, it's incredibly isolating at the same time. So can you share a little bit about like the counterintuitive nature of social media and how that can actually make us more lonely?
Sure. Well, I do think it's important to be intentional about the way you're using it. Like, yes, Rebecca, you and I are interacting on social media, but we're doing it at a predetermined time and place where we both agreed to show up and to talk to each other, which is quite different from people, that are just randomly scrolling and staring at the accounts of people that they don't even know, where there's no real possibility for interaction with those people. And I'm not a native social media user myself. I'm not going to say my age, but I'll tell you, I was in my 20s, when the whole, Facebook and everything started to really take off. And I do think that we can keep up with each other and be friends with each other on social media. And it's actually been amazing for me. I've done some incredible networking, et cetera, that way. However, I do think it's very important to notice the difference between being on social media where you're typing messages to people and interacting with the posts that other people that are making, versus you're just staring at the accounts of, say, influencers, where it's not really an interaction.
Yeah, it's not only not really an interaction, but oftentimes it's not even real. It's like performative, disingenuous through so many filters. And then we convince ourselves that like, oh my God, this person has this amazing life and everything is fine. And what's wrong with me? Like I'm still wearing yoga pants at home with my newborn and I can't get out the door just to get a cup of coffee and I feel so trapped. I just feel like it's so easy to make ourselves feel even worse when we're doing, like you say, the aimless scrolling. And one of the things that I always say to myself and to others is like, put the phone down sometimes, right? Just put the phone down or remove Instagram from your phone, even for a certain period of time, or, just like put some limitations on that, like boundaryless access that you have to other people's feeds. And so now let's like go into what we can do about it. I mean, I don't like the phrase empower yourself because we all have the power already. We all have extreme capabilities within ourselves. So like, how can we use our own capabilities? Let's say, like you said, like you have a newborn at home, or let's say that your partner died last year and it's mid-January and it's post-holidays and you've already had a really hard holiday season and now things feel extra hard. How do you deal with these feelings of loneliness? How do you do that? What are some simple, like first time steps that people can take?
Yes, yeah. So one of the things that I think is really helpful for people is to actually keep a call list, right? Because I think we all have this idea where just in general, we're like, oh yeah, I keep meaning to talk to my cousin so and so, or my old friend so and so, or this person from church or whatever, that whenever we do talk, it's always so nice, but then we never really think of it. And yet, to your point about social media, we find ourselves, spending 6 or 8 hours a week, just scrolling on
Or
social
more.
media. And I love your idea where you're saying that we have this, thing where we say, okay, I'm just going to put the phone down. But it's a lot easier to do that if we have something that we're going to do instead. Otherwise, it's like saying, don't think about pink elephants. Don't think about social media, put the phone down and don't think about it. Well, what are we going to pivot on to? And so I find it very helpful to actually keep a literal call list of all the people in your life that you keep meaning to call whenever you have a few minutes. And the reason it's important to actually write it down is because when we're under stress, when we're under the duress of that moment of loneliness, that moment of angst, we can actually get a little bit of tunnel vision. It's almost like a fight or flight holdover from the caveman days, and we can't really think in a broad net sort of a way. So what we do is, in a calm state to empower ourselves, what we do is we prepare ourselves. In a calm state of mind, we say, what are 5 or 10 people that I really would like to keep up with more often if I, quote, had the time. And then when you do find yourself with, even 10, 15 odd minutes here and there, you just hit your list. You can go through that list. And if you just keep working that list, going down it, you will find somebody. And then the other people that, maybe they missed your call, they'll see that you called and they'll call you back. And I think of it almost like sowing seeds. And the next thing you know, your garden will really start to bloom.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. And I think that like to people like you and I, this kind of feels almost like such an obvious thing to do. I mean, I'm a very social person, and when I'm feeling really lonely, I'm like, who do I need to talk to? Who is the person who always makes me laugh? Like, who's the person I can tell anything to? Who's the person I could just say hi to and don't have to like talk a lot, but it's nice to have the space on the line, or that person, for a drink or whatever. But I also think that a part of this is not waiting for that perfect moment when you have all the time in the world for a catch up, right? Like I feel like the delays, they snowball because we think, oh, we're so busy with work, we're busy with all these other things in life, our day-to-day, stress. I feel so lonely, but I don't have that hour to have that real catch up with that person that I really need. The thing that I've embraced in COVID times is like, take the time that you can get. And it really does make a difference. Like sometimes I'll just text a friend. I'll be like, I just want you to know I'm thinking of you. Like I saw a post of hers where it looked like she was going through a tough time, or I'm having a really rough day and I just like need to have a laugh from somebody. So I'll text a friend and say like, what's like the best SNL joke or video you've ever seen? Like, just please send me the funniest thing you've ever seen to make
You
me
know,
just like,
Rebecca, I just want to jump in there and notice something that you are doing there that I think is really helpful. I want to point out for people, which is that you're not afraid to tell people that you need their support. Like, hey, I'm having a hard day. I'd love to talk, whatever. And I just want to share, as a psychologist, a lot of people who are, very high functioning, meaning, they have busy, full, active lives, et cetera. They're used to being self-sufficient, and they have it in their minds that it is somehow imposing on other people to, call them and ask them for support or tell them you're having a bad day or whatever. And the truth is that actually psychology studies show that asking people for small favors, like, hey, I'm having a bad day, can you talk me out of it? Small favors actually makes the person being requested, it makes them feel important. It makes them feel like you trust them, and it brings people closer. So
yeah.
to people listening, don't be afraid to call your support network and ask for support. You're not going to drain them. I mean, unless you're doing it like 8 times a day to the same person. But if it's, like once a week or whatever, you're not going to drain them. You're actually boosting them.
Okay, so now let's be honest. Not everyone feels like they have a support network. There are people, you're talking about older people who might have had a lot of people, in their support network pass away, or maybe they're very ill. You have some people who are maybe divorced and who feel like they've lost a lot of their friendship base in the wake of that. So now, what are some ways that we can deal with these feelings of extreme isolation when we don't have that like automatic list?
Yeah, so there's a few things. So First of all, a lot of times your support network is bigger than you think. And again, if you're waiting until that moment of loneliness to drum up names, it's almost like waiting until you're starving and then trying to think of a healthy snack.
Yeah,
So I would just repeat
exactly.
again to think about, even if you think you don't have a support network, to really scratch your head, think about it, and keep a call list. And that's, one way we create a support network is by developing and nurturing even the few connections that we may have. Now, if you truly just feel like you want to broaden your network, and again, that's a good thing. There's a few things that you can do. Certainly your church, synagogue, house of worship, those types of places are, full of connection, and you can join the church choir. You can volunteer, you can join a book club, you can take a class, and you can do these things in person, or you can do them online. You can go to meetup.org and put in, your city, and, walking club or nature club, cooking, whatever it is. What you can also do is you can host a little event at your own home. And being, January, you can say a lot of, one of my New Year's resolutions is to meet more people. So I'm going to invite 3 friends, and I'm going to tell each of my 3 friends to bring a friend. We're going to have a friend expansion party, and, we're going to meet each other. Other things like the Journal of the American Medical Association also published some research showing that getting a massage will actually reduce cortisol levels by about 30%. And the
Mm.
idea there is that we experience skin hunger, we experience a yearning to be touched. And even if you're immunocompromised, I would even perhaps say, especially if you're immunocompromised, if you have some reason that you're specifically keeping your distance from people, again, check with your doctor to make sure that you're, being safe about it. But that might be the type of situation where you really need to book some time, whether it be with a talk therapist or a massage therapist, or someone that can even just kind of give you a soft landing, reinvigorating that part of yourself to be around people.
I think that is honestly amazing. I think it's awesome that you brought that up because I had a book come out earlier this year about ways to, it's called the Modern Loss Handbook, an interactive guide to moving through grief and building your resilience. And there's a part of that book that deals with our desperate need for touch sometimes when we're living with loss. And sometimes, like you said, it doesn't have to be like, our best friend hugging us for hours. Sometimes it can be as simple, like you said, as a massage, or even if you can just spare, it doesn't even have to be as expensive as a massage. You can get a pedicure, a manicure, like get the extra 10-minute massage that comes with like the calf rub. Or some people in our community have talked about how they go sometimes get a blowout because it's just like this little intimate connection where they have this one-on-one and people are kind of doing very safe, you know, physical contact with them that makes them feel comfortable, and it makes them feel less like physically isolated. And I'm so glad that you brought that up because frankly, I forgot to. So thank you.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, and to your point about being budget conscious, when I was in graduate school, I was like beyond broke. And, I would do things like go to a cosmetology school or a massage therapy school where you can often get treatments for free or for like $10 for people that are just really trying to watch their budget.
Yes, perfect. Well, Dr. Chloe, we are very sadly out of time because this is like a huge topic. It's like talking about life, right? I mean, we could talk about it for much more than 20 minutes,
One more
talking about
quick
loneliness.
tip.
Yeah,
I want to
anything.
share
Yeah,
just one more quick tip, which is
sure.
that I think it can also be very helpful for people to automate their social interaction. And I know that sounds like really sterile, but it can actually be very warm. So, for example, my family, every Sunday, we invite somebody over to our home to come over and have a meal with us after church. And so once you get into the routine of something, whether it be like standing Sunday brunch with your girlfriends or whatever it may be, if you can find any kind of regular thing that you do, it becomes easier.
Yes, it definitely does because it's kind of like a muscle that that you're making stronger. And then it kind of is like, yeah, you have a muscle memory after a while. Well, Dr. Chloe Carmichael, thank you so much. Thank you so much, really, for coming on today and chatting with me for January's Light After Loss. Both Dr. Chloe and I are going to be hopping on to the comments section of this video afterwards. So I really encourage anyone to please ask some questions, support each other, make some comments, and we'll hop on at some point and respond to them. So thank you so much, Dr. Chloe.
You're so welcome. And if people are interested in more ways that they can learn about the healthy functions of some of these emotions, they can go to anxietyishealthy.com.
Great. Thank you so much. And thanks to everybody who watched. There are several more videos for Light After Loss in the archives dealing with a variety of topics. And we haven't barely scraped the surface over the course of the last year or so. So I encourage you to check those out. And I will see you next month. Take good care.
Bye.